Do you ever see a successful woman on your feed or in a magazine and think, wow, it must be nice to have it so easy? Well, think again. Behind that glossy cover or smiling face is a ton of hard work, countless failures, and endless learning experiences. I'm Rebecca Minkoff, and I'm here to tell you that success isn't a walk in the park. It takes grit, resilience, and a willingness to take risks. That's why I created Superwoman, a podcast that peels back the varnish and gets into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to make it as a woman in today's world. From luminaries and game changers to women you've never heard of but should, this podcast is here to inspire you to take your next leap, no matter how daunting it may seem. We'll explore the sacrifices these women have made, the highs and lows they've experienced, and the lessons they've learned along the way. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn from some of the most successful women out there, join me on Superwomen. Together, we'll uncover the stories behind the successes and prove that with hard work, determination, and a little bit of luck, anything is possible. Hey everyone, you're listening to Superwomen. Today's guest is the founder of Nomadica Wines, Kristin Olszewski. She is an amazing, inspiring former sommelier who took all the knowledge that she learned and all of the people that she was serving and realized she was part of a dying industry. Her goal to reinvent and imagine sustainably made, organically, sugar-free, all the things that you would expect from a wine without the chemicals, without the bottles, better for you, better for the environment. Her story is truly inspiring. We go deep on what it took to get started, who to take advice from and who to not, and what she does to chill out. Take a listen. Kristin, welcome to the podcast.
So stoked to be here.
So can you do some explaining for my listeners? What is your business? And then we'll get into the rest.
I own Nomadica Wines, which is a 365 sustainable wine company. So not only are our wines best in class, best in quality, all sustainably farmed, made without chemical manipulation, fermented dry, natural for all intents and purposes, but the packaging is sustainable. We were the first people to do fine wine in can, which is a 70% reduction in carbon footprint. And we also just recently launched 3-liter boxed wine, which I'm obsessed with. I think wine tastes better out of a box than a bottle. Hot take from a sommelier there, but that's almost a 90% reduction in carbon footprint.
So before we start on your story, can we get nerdy about wine? Because all I hear about, or, like you go and you drink, you feel like shit. And it's like, well, it's the sulfates. And then it's not organic. And then they add sugars and then they add this. So can you just break down for me why it is so important, if you are going to drink wine, to drink a sustainable wine, and what are companies doing to it that are like making it this toxic soup that we're consuming?
This is like my most asked question when I used to be a sommelier in Michelin restaurants. People are like, I have a sulfite allergy, and almost no one has a sulfite allergy. There's actually more sulfites in things like tinned fish and mayonnaise than in wine. There are things called a tannin allergy. So tannins are those things in wine, also in things like tea or dried fruit. When you oversteep black tea and you can feel it on your teeth when you're drinking it, that's tannin. So people are sensitive to those. I do think more people should just drink water in between wine, but a lot of wine, particularly California, developed a pretty gnarly reputation that was well-deserved, even though things are really changing right now in the California wine industry, because a lot of people my age have started taking it over and producing lighter, fresher, more clean style wines. But for most of the California wine industry, we were talking about like over-mechanized agriculture, lots of pesticides. There are about 70 different chemicals that can legally be put in your bottle of wine and not disclosed to you on the label. Some of them are just, not a big deal, in my opinion, like egg whites to fine and filter. Some of them a little gnarly, like mega purple to give it the illusion of body and oak. The second I have a wine with mega purple and I instantly get a headache. So that, and for a long time, stylistically, people in California were leaving a lot of residual sugar in the wine. So when you're making wine, you let the yeast metabolize all the grape sugars, and you can decide when to stop that metabolic process. So all of my wines are naturally 0 grams of sugar per serving because we let that process go to completion, which is called dry fermentation. So when you hear a lot of people saying like, give me a dry wine, that's what they mean. They mean not sweet. But there are certain, I won't name names, but big name expensive, California Cabernet Sauvignons that have between 9 to 12 grams of residual sugar per liter.
Yeah.
And, also that results in 14 to 16% alcohol. Like, I think that's why you always hear people talking about their Europe vacations. And they're like, when I was drinking wine all day on the Amalfi Coast, I felt fine. But here, I don't. And I think that's why it's so important for people like myself and this new wave of California winemakers who are doing things in the correct way and
Yeah.
making it really easy for people to navigate a very nebulous, difficult world of choosing wine.
Thank you for explaining that because I think, again, yes, I go back to my European glory days and just drank all the time and it didn't matter. And now it's like one glass and I'm dead. I'm still recovering from Friday. So what made you go from sommelier to let me not only start a wine company, but let me do everything hard, right? Sustainable, organic, all the things that just chip away at money and
Yeah.
difficulty.
Well, there is that old adage in the wine industry, like, what's the best way to make $1 million in wine? Start with $1 billion and then buy a winery. And it is true. No. So before becoming a sommelier, I got my undergrad degree in sustainable agriculture and creative writing and gender studies. So always loved the intersection of great farming and storytelling. Did a little detour, ended up dropping out of Harvard Medical School to become a sommelier. So I like hard things. I think a lot of the other founders I meet, I call them like gold star humans. Like they're always like striving for the next gold star and it's never enough. I don't know what that says about our childhoods, but here we are. After a decade in Michelin restaurants, which, so grateful for that experience. I'm so lucky to have developed that breadth and depth of knowledge. Most people don't know what first growth Bordeaux tastes like, or these really rare bottles of wine. But I was only talking to the same type of person, which was pretty much 50-plus-year-old white guy wine collector. And when I was at Ostria Mozza in Los Angeles, my boss, Nancy Silverton, was on a show called Chef's Table.
Mhm.
And for the first time, people my own age started coming in, particularly women, dining with each other. And I noticed they didn't want to crack the wine list. They would order like cocktails and beer, anything but wine, which always felt like such a miss because what's better than wine? It's the most ancient beverage. Nothing accentuates and uplifts your meal like wine. It's so incredible. It's so special. And the second I went over to them and like brought them into the world of wine, showed them you don't need to spend a lot of money, you don't need a PhD to enjoy this, people were hooked. And I wanted to do that on a larger level. Like I really started my business for the love of wine. And I kind of saw my industry, I don't want to say dying, but I saw my industry going in a direction that I fundamentally disagreed with. And right now, this was in 2017. And in the last few years, there's been a lot of sensationalist articles, the wine industry's dying, millennials and Gen Z aren't drinking wine. And part of me has been like, yeah, no shit. You weren't talking to young consumers. You were talking to a very select an elite group of consumers. You're wondering why young people aren't trying your wine when you're only advertising in wine enthusiasts.
Right, right.
I don't know a single like cool person that reads Wine Enthusiasts. Like,
Definitely not. I don't know anyone that reads that magazine. So
yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. Or they're drinking like wine coolers, or I don't know. I feel like no shade to Loverboy, but I'm like, why? Why would you drink that disgusting drink? You know?
Yes, things should taste good, in my humble opinion.
I agree with you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so how did you even know where to start? And was it ever overwhelming?
It's
Still overwhelming?
it's never not overwhelming. I think a friend of mine just started a business and became the CEO officially with her group of partners. And I did an evil laugh and I was like, welcome to hell, baby. Like it's the roller coaster. No, I think in the early days is when it was the most fun and the least overwhelming. Although now it is like, I would say more satisfying. I had no clue what I was doing. Something that's really amazing about being a sommelier is you develop relationships with your regulars. And so these same people come in and they're like, okay, choose me a bottle of wine under, 100, $150. And so those people become close. You learn about their families, all these things. And a lot of those people in my restaurant in LA were awesome business leaders. So that's who I went to first. My family, like I was the first person to go to college. I didn't really have that like friends and family network to raise from. And so I raised my friends and family around from Moza regulars. Like Jason Priestley from 90210 is one of our first angel check.
Jason Priestley, I have the Barbie doll, okay?
Him and his wife are huge Chianti lovers and like have excellent wine taste. They're amazing people as well.
I don't need to go, of course, but what is Jason Priestley doing now?
He's living in Nashville, two beautiful children, amazing wife, like great marriage. He deserves everything he's received in life. He's just like a wonderful human.
Oh my God, that's so cool. So was it scary to ask people that were your customers for the funds and did you ever experience like, you've never run a business? How do you know how to be a CEO? Like, how did you sort of convince these people to invest?
So that was the most challenging thing when I went out and tried to raise a traditional round. The fact that I don't have an MBA, that I've never run a business made it really difficult to get investment. And also my non-traditional background. I didn't realize that being an expert in my field would be seen as a bad thing.
Why is it such a bad thing?
You look at the beverage industry right now, and all the other women, all have MBAs or worked in venture. If we're talking male beverage founders, they almost all come from venture. So it's expertise is not valued anymore, I think, in terms of the funding landscape.
It's wild because you probably have more native understanding of wine and what makes it successful than any person in venture who's like, oh, let's slap a catchy logo on this thing and sell a lot of them.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to a really big wine company and they were like, how do you just know the trends? You just see the trends and you just execute on them. And I'm like, that's the beauty of coming from the ground up. Like I still run wine programs in Los Angeles. I'm opening up a restaurant next year. I, see I'm selling more orange wine by the glass at like the hottest restaurant in Los Angeles. I'm seeing that before it's going to show up on Nielsen data years. But I think in terms of the friends and family round, I always tell young founders this, like ask everybody for advice. Don't ask anyone for money. Approach people with like openness, curiosity. I think when people feel that, they want to support you. And if they have the funds to do so, they will.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. How many people did you have to ask before you got your first yes?
The friends and family round was actually easy.
Okay.
The first price round was incredibly challenging. And even still, I mean, every single round I've raised has been more difficult for other reasons.
Yeah.
You're held to different standards. I think people don't want to fund women.
Right.
Yeah, it's the thing we hear time and time again, people that tell me to come back when I have more traction, invest in a male founder with a quarter of my sales and nowhere near my gross profit or my route to exit. So it's hard to not become totally disillusioned by that. But I think I've been really lucky. Like our first venture firm that led our pre-seed round is a group called Lunch Partners. And they're all these like amazing marketing executives that started a venture firm. And so they're not traditional. They're all geniuses. They have the ability to like see beyond, I think, what a lot of other metrics venture categorizes a business with. And they like support a lot of women of color and a lot of women founders. It's really amazing.
Wow. How would you say you're able to manage your business now, expand it? You mentioned you're opening up a restaurant. Do you sleep? Do you have any personal time?
I like to say my hobby is working. No.
That's, by the way, that's not a bad thing. Like I was just a guest on a podcast before we started, and he was like, "What's the trick?" I was like, "There isn't a trick. If you're launching a business, you have to fucking work hard all the time for a long time. There is no taking time off. And if you figure that out, like, hallelujah." So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's reality.
It is. And you're going to work weekends all the time. You're going to work late nights. You're going to not ever sleep or have any personal space. But, It's fun. I really like building things. I would say I've probably created one of the most, not by intent, but by just going after some of the best people in my industry. I have one of the most diverse teams in wine right now. We slash Nomadica has become, I would say, a safe space for a lot of women in my industry because the alcohol industry is very old school. I mean, fashion, I would say, is probably not very different. And it's amazing the talent you can attract by just being a really great person and working on your leadership abilities and treating people with integrity and respect. Yeah, it's sounds crazy, right? Yeah, it goes a long way. But no, I have really good team members, like my VP of sales, my VP of finance. I have incredible board members. I recently just added this woman, Jessica Kogan, to my board, who is an exited founder from the wine industry. She was in the C-suite at a publicly traded winery for years. Like she's created, before every board meeting, I'm on the phone with her for an hour and a half. That I would say adding somebody like that to my life has been really life-changing.
Would you say that your goal is similar to those of your peers to get acquired and continue, or are you like, what is, I guess, your long game?
My goal is to bring the young consumer back to wine. I'm, not to get on my high horse, but like I'm saving my industry. It is dying and it is like do or die at the moment, particularly for California wine. I think when we talk about sustainability in wine, shipping wine from overseas is not sustainable. Drinking wine out of glass bottles is not sustainable. The younger consumer wants something different. They want something single serve that's less, muss and fuss, but with the same quality that they expect from bottled wine. So whatever path we take, I just want Nomadica to be everywhere and I want to continue to create things. Like we just launched a Yuzu Rosé Spritz in partnership with Gus Kenworthy, who was the first openly gay, sports athlete. He came out after the 2015 Sochi Olympics, where he won a silver medal for skiing. And along the lines of like the Lover Boys, the High Noons, the White Claws of the world, I wanted to make something low ABV, but all natural, but like crushable and delicious, like something that you pour over ice and you have to like stop yourself from drinking it so fast. And so we launched it and it's been a better reception than I could have imagined. And I have like so many ideas on new product lines, SKUs, like things beyond wine. So I want to keep creating. That's my favorite part of my job.
Yeah, it's mine too. And I get annoyed when it's not happening fast enough because I'll move at a lightning pace. And then my CEO is like, slow the fuck down. We need 18 months. And I'm like, no, it's now.
You're like, I see it. I see it.
I see it. We're going to miss it. It's going to be too late in 18 months. And so I think that's the hardest part is learning to throttle that engine a little bit.
That's hard. That's the hardest part.
Yeah. So how did you learn what you didn't know about being a CEO?
Oh my God. So still learning. I would say my best resources have been my investors who I trust. I have a really incredible group of advisors. And then I have like Los Angeles is home to all these amazing food and beverage CEOs and founders. So I have like a group chat with, Aishwarya, who owns Brightland Olive Oil, and Sabina from Dough, the best. Wait, have you had this?
Dough as in donuts or?
She makes donuts, but it's also adaptogenic cookie dough and it's gluten-free. It's so delicious.
Oh, it's spelled D-O with a little thingy over it?
It's DEUX.
Oh no, then I haven't had it yet.
Okay, I'm gonna get you some. It's actually dangerous. But they're incredible marketers. They're incredible salespeople. I think we all have different skill sets and we so readily share them. Like, yeah, like that's really wonderful to have that. And then that group of women is really a safe space where maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable asking a question to an investor, but like, you text your CEO friends and you're like, you guys, I am freaking out right now. Like, how do I handle this situation? Please help me. And somebody always calls right away. It's the best community.
That's so nice to hear that you have that because I feel like without that, I would be in a mental institution.
Yes, like nothing good would happen.
No,
and like thank God for that. Yeah, lateral networking is so important.
Yeah, I think for sure. It seems lateral, but really it's almost like It's lateral, and then one of them gives you the layup, and then you shoot the thing into the net, the ball into the net. I should know these terms. What has been a lesson or a time where you were very wrong, and what did you do to solve that?
So my biggest mistakes have come at the expense of not trusting myself or my own gut. Um, and listening and watching what other people were doing and giving that too much credence. I made not the best hire for me. I think those mistakes happen, and I took too long to eliminate the problem or address it head on, and it ended up being very painful.
Yeah.
So I would say when something feels wrong, it probably is.
Yeah.
And don't bury your head in the sand.
No, gotta stick it back out. Face the music.
Exactly.
So where can people buy Nomadica wines, and how do we get on board?
So you can buy them online at explorenomadica.com. We're also distributed in 25 states. Find us at Whole Foods, your independent retailer. We're rolling out some really big retail next year in the spring, so that's very exciting. It will be more widely available for everybody very soon. So I'm over the moon about that.
I feel like if someone could take over Chateau Diana's business, they would be doing a service for humanity and be in available wherever you go for that late night. Oh shit, I need a bottle of wine.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Okay,
Give me a year. Give me a year.
okay. I'll never forget. This was when I was young and I knew nothing about wine, but we had these guests coming over. We made all this beautiful food, and then I ran out to go get some wine, and everything was closed. It was like a Sunday night. And I came back with some Chateau Diana, not knowing what it was. And I took a sip and I was like, "Bleh." And then my neighbor was like, I feel so sorry for you right now. Let me go get you a nice bottle of wine from my stash. And I was like, right, right. Because that's not really wine. It's grape juice with chemicals.
Yeah, you're like, oh no. So I have to ask you, how do you choose a bottle of wine or choose what you're going to drink?
Oh gosh. Well, it's a very my process these days is like, what time am I going to get to go to bed? Is he going to wake up throughout the night? And how many times is he going to wake up? Do I have to do drop off? Do I have to wake up early for a meeting? I have to go through my list of like, what's going to fuck me up more? Not drinking wine or drinking wine. Once I've decided I'm indulging in the wine, these days I'm looking for a biodynamic or an organic wine. But that's very rare, I feel like, to see that on a restaurant. So I pick the driest wine I can find, and I usually like a Pinot Noir or a rosé if it's summertime, but I still feel so messed up by it that I just, I get scared. I'm like, I don't want that feeling tomorrow.
Have you had some times where you haven't felt that way? Or is it like just 100% of the time you kind of feel not great after drinking wine?
Without naming a competitive brand, I went to an event a couple weeks ago. It's organic. It's not biodynamic, but organic and no sugar. And I drank a lot that night. And the next day I was like, wow, I don't feel as awful as I probably should feel.
So without naming this competitive brand, I do have to say I really like them. I think they've carried the conversation forward a lot in the wine industry. Yeah, and I'm a fan.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, the fact that I was like able to get up and do camp drop off and not have a splitting headache I was like, you get a plus, you get a pass from me. So,
Hey, it's really important. It's kind of crazy. I feel like the organic farming, the lack of chemical manipulation, the no sugar, like all of that does add up.
yeah, it does. So, the two questions that I like to ask all my guests, which you might or might not be prepared for, what would we be surprised to know about you?
So I'm learning to surf right now. I'm originally from the East Coast and I live in Los Angeles now, and I like have still retained my biting East Coast sarcasm that's gotten me a lot of trouble, but I'm trying to like be more chill. And so I'm loving learning to surf. We live in Malibu now, so it's kind of the perfect place. It felt like do or die.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm actually not bad at it. It's kind of cool.
That's amazing to hear. I I am scared of the water, but I admire people who are not. Um,
For good reason. The ocean's terrifying.
my friend was like, I was like, how do you know when like she showed me footage of this triathlon and then the shark just chilling, like the drone footage. And it was like all these people in the water. And she's like, you can feel it. It gets sharky. And I was like, it gets sharky. She's like, yeah, when they're around because there's a sixth sense of like, it's, dark and murky and there's a seal and, just get out of the water. I was like, the fact that you like feel that like freaks me out. But I grew up in San Diego body surfing and boogie boarding and I didn't care at all then. So I just have to.
And now there's like so many great whites in San Diego.
You will not catch me below my knees.
Okay? Hey, that's why I always surf at this one beach where every time I go, I like stand on the shore and watch to see the dolphins. And then I'm like, okay, like we're good.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Love that. Yeah. Greatest piece of advice you'd like to pass on that you learned the hard way or someone gave to you?
Don't take advice from people whose lives you don't want.
Ooh, that is really good. I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
People give a lot of free advice. That's not great.
Yeah, that's true. It's like getting upset about the troll in their basement on your Instagram comments. Like, I don't want their lives. Why should I be upset? Right?
Yeah, about their opinion. Sorry. Like, it doesn't matter.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so excited for you. Thank you not only for what you're doing for our bodies, but our environment as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
Dream achieved.
Yay. I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I also want to ask you to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it actually helps with search and algorithms. So if you love this podcast, it is an easy way to get it more visible and out there. I also want you to follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff, at RM Superwomen, and be sure to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. Thank you again, and you will hear from me next week.